What's going on, guys? Biff McBuffington here. Today we have quite the low-hanging fruit for us pointless comedy commentators. Mr. Joe Rogan himself finally put out his big comedy special. And there have been many comments, many articles, and it's been quite the adventure. Not really, but a lot of people are complaining, making fun of him, saying it's the worst stand-up ever, saying it's worse than Gringo Papi. And I would just like to point out, it is not worse than Gringo Papi. It's not great, but it is definitely not worse than Gringo Papi. So we can just get that out of the way. So anyway, I got some notes here. So I'm going to go sort of in chronological order through the special, but I'm not going to comment on everything. Just sort of some notes that I came up with as I was listening to it. And I would like to say I watched it today, which is Monday, and it was released on Saturday. So there were like 3 days in there where I was reading comments and the articles, and it sort of set me up to expect the worst. And maybe that's why I don't... maybe that is why I think it's better than Gringo Papi. But we'll see, and you guys can let me know if you agree or disagree or whatever. Okay, so pretty early on, he talks about fear factor, and I thought that was okay. I actually still watch Fear Factor. Ironically, I use it as like background noise when I go to bed. For some reason, people trying to eat cockroaches puts me to sleep. I don't know why. Anyway, so that part was okay. I got some chuckles out of it. He then goes to talk about aliens. That part was okay. I don't really remember. I just remember most of it was just not quite there. This whole special is pretty much just like every Rogan talking point, like aliens, Elon Musk, Alex Jones, freedom of speech, like woke, quote unquote. So like if you listen to his podcast, pretty much every single topic is going to be very recognizable, because it's pretty much just his podcast in slightly more funny form. Okay, so the next part, I did laugh at the part where he's talking about, like, he gets into COVID, and one of the things he says is a lot of dude executives got fired because they were jerking off on Zoom, and I didn't really do it justice, but like it was pretty good. I would say the highlight of this was when he was making fun of himself, talking about what would have happened if he died from COVID. And that part was pretty good because, you know, if you remember, Joe was, you know, I mean, he's basically anti whatever. And he was saying, you know, if if he ended up dying because he didn't get the jab, the whole internet would have just absolutely dunked on him for it. So that part was pretty good. He did a ton of name drops, like Elon, Alex Jones, Bert Kreischer, Tony Hinchcliffe. That might have been all of them, but still, like, name dropping 4 people is, I feel like it's kind of excessive. And I do have a theory on this. You know, obviously, if you asked him why he name dropped so many people, he would just say, you know, they're my friends, I wanted to include them. But I think he did it so it would be one less person to make fun of the special if it went badly. Because I'm sure he was mentally prepared for this to not go as well as like the hype and expectations were. Because, I mean, the amount of people who watched this must have been absolutely insane, just because, you know, it's Mr. Joe Rogan himself. Like, everybody is going to be watching it. So I feel like it was a way to sort of mitigate the blow if it didn't go so well. But that's just my crappy conspiracy theory. Okay, so he This has always been a talking point in the people making fun of Rogan and his stand-up, and that is how he just yells all the time. And this was no exception, because he pretty much yelled the entire time, and it's really strange. Like it almost feels like he's yelling because like his microphone isn't loud enough or something. And he was like, I feel like he was more self-aware than he normally is on his podcast, but there were a couple parts where he sort of fumbled on that, and there was one in particular that was really perfect for him to make himself the butt of the joke, and he didn't, because he was talking about how confident dumb people annoy him. And there was this like one part where it was perfect, where he could have just like laid into himself a little bit, and it would have, eased the pressure, so to speak, but he didn't, and it's kind of a shame. I think I missed it, but there was actually a TSA part that was pretty funny. So I think between that part and the COVID part, like if he died from COVID, I feel like those were the two parts that really clearly made this a step above Gringo Papi. Like if those were not in there, I would have felt a bit differently about that. Like maybe then I would have been like, all right, well, these aren't too far apart, but no, they were in there. Okay, so the next part, and I don't know why he does this, but all these comedians are just so passionate about trying to fit a transgender, and it's not even one joke, it's always like a whole thing. Like they all feel the need to put a whole thing on transgendered in their specials, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't get why there's this big goal of fitting that in these specials. Like of all the things they could talk about, it's always that one thing they just have to shove in there. And it's just so weird to me. Like who made that the holy grail at the end game of comedic genius? It just feels really arbitrary. And of course, Mr. Joe Rogan falls into this trap too. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, honestly, I don't even remember what the bit was or the string of bits. I just remember it's like, oh, he's going to be doing this thing again. All right, well, I'll just mentally check out, because it's all these guys do anymore. And I'm not saying this because I thought it was like offensive. Like, honestly, I'm not really in a place where I could call it offensive or not. That's not really the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is all these dorks are trying so hard to do it, and it's just so freaking tired at this point. So yeah, didn't care for that part. So I think that's really about it for me as far as my pointless, crappy summary of this pointless, crappy special. No, like honestly, I thought it was okay. I guess the one thing I do want to say to wrap this up, if this wasn't Joe Rogan and this was somebody else, like let's just say it was some middling comedian who's like, they have like a following but are otherwise like unknown. This would have been a very mediocre, quickly forgotten, not very watched comedy special. But because it's Rogan, everybody on the planet's watching it and making stupid videos and comments and articles. So it's just getting, like honestly, it's getting way more attention than it deserves. But it wasn't painful. So I can at least give them that. So, yeah, so that's really about it. So what do you guys think? Do you think it was terrible? Do you think it was better? Everybody on the internet has a pretty strong opinion one way or another. So you can let me know And yeah, until next time, I will see you guys later.